The throne room doors exploded inward with a crack that echoed through the vaulted chamber. Every head turned. Every conversation died mid-syllable. The Sovereign Council of Drathos, composed of 7 species representing 43 worlds, fell into absolute silence as Queen Thessera rose from her throne. "Bring him now." The words were soft, almost gentle. They carried the weight of a collapsing star. The royal guards flanked the entrance, weapons lowered but ready. Between them stumbled a human in stained prisoner grays, wrists bound in neural dampeners that pulsed with each heartbeat. Blood crusted one side of his face. His left eye was swollen shut. He moved with the careful deliberation of someone counting broken ribs. Ambassador Krell of the Vexian Concordat stood abruptly, his 6 arms spreading in diplomatic alarm. "Your Majesty, protocol dictates that prisoners remain in the detention sector during council proceedings. This is highly irregular." Thessera's gaze never left the human. Protocols change. The temperature in the room dropped 3 degrees. Every counselor felt it. Every guard's posture stiffened incrementally. When the Queen of Drathos spoke in that particular tone, empires listened or burned. The prisoner raised his head. Despite the damage, despite the neural dampeners draining his strength, his single visible eye found hers immediately. Something passed between them. Recognition, not of faces, but of something deeper. Something that made High Priest Valmont grip his ceremonial staff until the ancient wood creaked. "State your name," Thessera commanded. "Marcus. Just Marcus." His voice was rough, damaged from screaming. The scars on his throat suggested recent interrogation. "Standard procedure for captured enemy combatants." "Just Marcus," she repeated. "The human who destroyed 3 of our battlecruisers single-handedly. Not single-handedly. I had help." He coughed, blood flecking his lips. "They're all dead now. Guess I should thank your efficiency." Gasps rippled through the assembled counselors. Admiral Thex, a towering Crothian whose species valued honor above life itself, moved toward the prisoner with murder in all 4 eyes. The guards intercepted him smoothly, politely, immovably. "You murdered 40,000 souls," Thex growled. "You incinerated the 7th Fleet's command structure. You destroyed ships that had protected the sector for 2 centuries. Marcus swayed but remained standing. They were firing on a civilian evacuation convoy. Medical ships. Children's transports. I asked you to stop. You didn't." "Lies!" Counselor Vesh's voice shrilled across the chamber, her serpentine form coiling in agitation. "The official reports state clearly that those were military vessels disguised as—" The official reports," Marcus interrupted, "were written by people who wanted to hide the fact that they slaughtered 70,000 unarmed refugees because their computers flagged the convoy as a potential threat." The throne room erupted. Demands for immediate execution competed with calls for investigation. Through it all, Thessera remained motionless, her expression unreadable. Only those who knew her well noticed the subtle tightening around her eyes, the slight compression of her lips. Silence. The word cut through the chaos like a blade through water. Instant. "Absolute. The human speaks truth," Thessera said quietly. "I have reviewed the unaltered sensor logs. Admiral Corvin gave the order to fire on confirmed civilian targets. He falsified the reports posthumously to protect his legacy. Corvin had died on one of those battlecruisers. A hero's death, the Empire had proclaimed. Monuments erected in his honor. Then this prisoner is a hero? High Priest Valmont's voice dripped with barely contained fury. He should be rewarded for murdering our people? Our defenders? No. Thessera descended the throne steps slowly, each footfall deliberate. Judged and sentenced according to our laws. He killed thousands. That debt exists regardless of cause. She stopped 3 paces from Marcus. Close enough that her guards tensed. Close enough that several counselors reached for concealed weapons. Close enough to see the exhaustion in his eye, the resignation of someone who had already accepted death. But first, Thessera continued, there is another matter, one that supersedes this council's authority. Your Majesty? Ambassador Krell's voice carried genuine confusion. What authority supersedes the Sovereign Council? The side door opened. A small figure entered, flanked by 2 nursemaids in traditional palace white. Princess Ayara was 7 years old, small even for her age, with her mother's silver eyes and her late father's gentle expression. She walked with the careful precision taught to royal children, hands folded, back straight, eyes forward. The entire court bowed. Even the prisoner attempted an awkward half-bow that sent pain lancing across his features. Ayara stopped beside her mother. She looked up at Thessara with an expression that held far too much understanding for a 7-year-old child. "Is this him?" Ayara asked softly. "Yes." The princess turned to Marcus, studied him with the intensity of someone memorizing every detail. The blood, the bruises, the way he held himself despite obvious agony, the defiance that hadn't yet died behind his visible eye. "You saved us," Ayara said. Marcus frowned. Winced. "I don't know what you mean." "The convoy. The medical ships. We were there. Mother and I. We were inspecting the refugee integration facilities." Ayara's voice remained steady, but her hands had begun to tremble. "I saw your ship. I saw you position yourself between us and the fleet. I watched you destroy ships that were going to kill us." The throne room had become a tomb. No one breathed. No one moved. Thessara placed one hand on her daughter's shoulder. "According to the ancient laws of Drethos, any individual who saves the life of the ruling monarch or their direct heir in a deliberate act of self-sacrifice gains the right of sanctuary. They cannot be tried, imprisoned, or executed for any crime committed in the preservation of the royal line." "Your Majesty, surely," Krell began. "However," Thessara continued, her voice hardening, "there is a second law, an older law, one invoked only 3 times in our recorded history. High Priest Valmont had gone pale, his species equivalent of bloodless shock. No, Your Majesty, no. You cannot be considering when an heir to the throne is saved by one who demonstrates absolute courage, unwavering moral clarity in impossible circumstances, and willingness to sacrifice everything for those they do not know." Thessara paused. "Let the words settle like stones into still water. That individual may be offered the position of royal guardian, protector of the heir, until their charge assumes the throne or releases them from service. The implications detonated through the council like sequential explosions. Royal guardian was not merely a bodyguard. It was a position of absolute authority second only to the monarch herself. It meant influence, power, access to state secrets. It meant a voice that could overrule admirals, override counselors, and reshape policy. It meant taking a human prisoner, a convicted war criminal, and elevating him to one of the highest positions in the Empire. This is madness. Admiral Thex's roar shook the chamber. "He killed our people. He destroyed our fleet. You would place him in the palace? Give him access to the princess? To state secrets?" Thessara turned to face the admiral. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of 900 years of dynastic rule. "He killed our people to save my daughter, to save me. To save 70,000 innocents your own admiral was murdering. Yes, Admiral Thex. I would give him exactly that." Ayara stepped forward before anyone could react. She reached into the small ceremonial pouch every royal child carried and withdrew a silver circle no larger than her palm, the heir's sigil, ancient, priceless, worn by royal guardians throughout history. "I choose him," Ayara said clearly. "By the laws of our ancestors and the right granted to me as heir to the throne of Drethos, I choose Marcus as my guardian." Marcus stared at the child, at the sigil, at the queen whose expression remained carved from stone even as her eyes betrayed something that might have been approval, might have been relief.
"I'm a prisoner," he said hoarsely.
"I'm your enemy. You were our enemy," Thessara corrected. "The question now is whether you will accept the position my daughter offers, whether you will pledge your life, your loyalty, and your honor to protecting the heir to a throne you just tried to destroy."
The neural dampeners pulsed. Guard shifted weight.
Counselors leaned forward, hungry for his answer. Marcus looked down at Ayara. 7 years old, holding out a symbol of trust to someone who had killed thousands of her people, who had every reason to be her enemy. "Why?" he asked the child. "Why choose me?" Ayara's silver eyes met his, because when the choice was between following orders and doing what was right, you chose right. Because when you had to pick between your life and ours, you picked ours. Because she paused, and for the first time her voice wavered. "Because I'm going to be queen someday, and I need someone who will tell me the truth even when it's hard, even when it hurts, even when everyone else is lying." The silence that followed held a quality beyond mere absence of sound. It felt like the universe itself pausing to witness something unprecedented. Marcus dropped to one knee. The movement cost him. Pain whitened his features. Blood seeped from reopened wounds. He didn't seem to notice. "I accept," he said quietly. "On one condition." Gasps. Outrage. How dare a prisoner impose conditions? But Thesara raised one hand, and the protest died instantly. Name it. The truth. Always. No matter how ugly. Marcus's eye found the Queen's. About the convoy. About Corvin's order. About every detail of what happened and why. The Empire deserves to know. The families of the people I killed deserve to know. Impossible, Councillor Veshist. The scandal would destabilize the entire sector. Confidence in the military would collapse. We would appear weak to our enemies. Then we would appear as we actually are, Marcus said. I'm perfect, fallible, capable of terrible mistakes, but also capable of acknowledging them and doing better. Thesara studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded once. Agreed. The full report will be released within the rotation. Classified sections included. Let the Empire judge for themselves. Your Majesty, the political consequences, Ambassador Krell's protest died as Thesara's gaze swung toward him, will be severe. I know. I accept them. This empire was built on strength and honor. When we sacrifice the second to preserve the first, we become something not worth preserving. Ayara stepped forward and placed the Heir's sigil in Marcus's bound hands. The neural dampener sparked, detecting the ancient artifact's quantum signature. They deactivated automatically with a soft chime, falling away from his wrists. For the first time in days, Marcus could feel his hands clearly, could move without the constant drain on his consciousness. He stared at the silver circle in his palms. Then he looked up at the child who had chosen him. I will protect you, he said softly, with everything I am. Everything I have, until you release me or I die. I know, Ayara said simply. She smiled then, small and tentative, but genuine. That's why I picked you. That's why I picked you. Thesara gestured, and 2 guards came forward carrying a wooden chest. They opened it to reveal the formal uniform of a royal guardian. Midnight blue trimmed in silver. Ancient symbols woven into the fabric. Weapons that had protected generations of heirs. You will be cleaned, treated, and equipped, Thesara said. Then you will assume your duties immediately. The princess has a state dinner tonight. You will attend at her side. Tonight? Admiral Thex's voice cracked. Your Majesty, he's barely standing. He needs medical treatment. Time to recover. He needs to be seen. Thesara's tone allowed no argument. The Empire needs to see that their queen keeps her word. That honor means something. That we are capable of change, even when it's painful. Marcus rose unsteadily. The guards supporting him now did so with the careful respect accorded to their superior, not the rough handling reserved for prisoners. He could feel the shift in the room's dynamic, could see counselors recalculating their political positions, could sense Admiral Thex's barely contained rage warring with professional discipline. High Priest Valmont approached, his ceremonial staff clicking against marble. If you betray this trust, he said quietly, if you harm the princess or misuse your position, I will personally ensure your death takes centuries. Our priesthood knows arts that would make your recent interrogation seem merciful. Marcus met the priest's gaze steadily. If I betray this trust, I'll help you, because I'll have become exactly what I was fighting against. Valmont's expression didn't soften, but something in his eyes shifted. Acknowledgement. Not agreement, not approval, but acknowledgement that the human understood the gravity of what he'd accepted. Ayara tucked her hand into Marcus's. The gesture sent another ripple through the assembly. A princess, a child of the royal blood, touching a human prisoner who'd killed thousands of her people, choosing to trust him publicly, completely, without reservation. Come on, she said. Medical bay first. You look terrible. A surprised laugh escaped Marcus before he could stop it. It hurt his ribs, made his vision blur, but it felt real in a way nothing had for days, weeks, maybe months. Yes, Your Highness. They walked toward the side exit together, the small princess and the battered warrior. Behind them, the Sovereign Council erupted into renewed chaos, accusations, arguments, demands for votes of no confidence. The usual machinery of political crisis grinding into motion. Thesara remained on her throne, watching her daughter leave with her chosen guardian. Admiral Thex approached, his massive form radiating suppressed violence. You're gambling the Empire on a broken human, he he said quietly. Why? Thessara didn't answer immediately. She watched until Ayara and Marcus disappeared through the doorway, watched the guards close ranks behind them with new purpose and new discipline. Because empires that cannot change cannot survive, she finally said. And because my daughter just demonstrated better judgment than this entire council combined. She saw what we should have seen. Integrity. The willingness to sacrifice everything for what's right. Thessara turned to face the Admiral. Tell me, Thex, when was the last time you saw those qualities in anyone in this room? The Admiral had no answer. Thessara rose, gathering her formal robes. Council is adjourned. We reconvene in 3 days to discuss the full disclosure of the convoy incident. Any counselor who objects may submit their resignation now. No one moved. No one resigned. But everyone understood that something fundamental had shifted, that the empire they'd known that morning was not the empire they'd be serving tonight. Outside the throne room, in the medical wing, Ayara sat on a stool watching as medics treated Marcus's injuries. The neural dampener burns required specialized care. The broken ribs needed cellular reconstruction. The interrogation damage would take days to fully heal. Does it hurt? She asked. Are you scared? Marcus paused, considered lying, decided against it, terrified. I'm enemy. A prisoner. I killed people your mother ruled. I don't know your customs. I don't know your laws. I don't know how to protect you beyond just standing between you and danger. That's a good start, Ayara said seriously. She picked up a medical scanner, examining it with the intense curiosity of childhood. My father died when I was 4. He had 12 guardians. All of them were brave, all of them were trained, all of them were ready to die for him. She set the scanner down carefully. None of them told him the truth when he made bad decisions. None of them questioned orders, even when those orders were wrong. So when the assassination came, they all died following protocol instead of thinking, following rules instead of adapting. Marcus felt something cold settle in his chest. You remember this? You were 4. I remember everything about that day. Ayara's silver eyes held depths no child should possess. I remember Mother screaming. I remember the fire. I remember thinking that if just one of the Guardians had done something different, something unexpected, maybe Father would still be alive. So you chose someone who breaks rules. I chose someone who thinks for himself, who questions, who cares more about right than about protocol. Ayara smiled slightly. The rules will keep me safe from ordinary threats. But extraordinary threats need extraordinary responses. You're my extraordinary response. The medical chief, a Vexian physician with decades of experience, finished sealing the last of Marcus's visible injuries. You'll need rest. Proper rest. Not just a few hours. I have a state dinner tonight. I know. I'm telling you anyway that you need rest. The physician packed away instruments with efficient movements. Royal guardians who ignore medical advice tend to die protecting their charges. Then the charges die anyway. Rest is part of the job. Marcus nodded slowly. Understood. Good. 3 hours minimum. I've prepared a recovery suite. Sleep. Actual sleep. The drugs I've given you will ensure it. The physician turned to Ayara. You should rest too, Your Highness. Tonight will be exhausting. I will. Thank you, Dr. Vess. The physician bowed and departed. Ayara hopped off her stool and walked to the window. Beyond the medical wing, the capital city of Drethos sprawled across the horizon. Towers of crystalline architecture caught the light of 3 suns. Ships moved through carefully controlled flight corridors. Millions of lives proceeding with the comfortable assumption that their world made sense, that their leaders operated according to known principles. They're going to hate you, Ayara said quietly. The people. When they learn what you did. When they see you standing beside me. They'll be angry. I know. Some will try to kill you. Assassins. Zealots. People who lost family on those battle cruisers. I know that too. And you still accepted. Marcus joined her at the window, looked out at the city he'd tried to destroy, the people who should rightfully want him dead. The empire that every part of his training said was the enemy. I accepted because you asked, because you were right, because... He paused, searching for words. Because I'm tired of choosing between bad options and worse ones. This is the first time in years someone offered me something good. Something worth protecting. Ayara reached up and took his hand, barely wrapped around 2 of his. We'll protect each other. Deal. They stood there together, guardian and heir, as the three sons began their descent toward the horizon. Somewhere in the palace, Thessera was dealing with political fallout. Somewhere in the military districts, Admiral Thex was managing the fleet's collective rage. Somewhere in the city, families mourned people Marcus had killed. But here, in this moment, a 7-year-old princess and a broken soldier found something neither had expected: hope. The beginning of something that might, against all probability, actually work. 3 hours, Marcus said. Then dinner? Then dinner. Lots of important people. Boring speeches, fancy food. Ayara grinned. You'll hate it. But I'll be there for you, daughter. I know, Ayara said. She squeezed his hand once, then released it. That's why it might actually be bearable. She left him then, heading toward her own quarters with her nursemaids and careful attendants. Marcus watched her go, then turned toward the recovery suite the physician had prepared. His body screamed for rest. His mind spun with implications, consequences, dangers he'd voluntarily embraced. But underneath the exhaustion and pain, something else stirred. Purpose. Direction. The sense that maybe, just maybe, he'd found something worth the cost. He slept, deep and dreamless, while the Empire began the slow, painful process of learning that sometimes the greatest threats come from within, and sometimes salvation arrives wearing enemy colors. 3 hours later, Marcus woke to find his new uniform waiting. Midnight blue trimmed in silver, ancient and precious. Heavy with responsibility, he put it on, checked the weapons, familiarized himself with equipment that had protected generations of royal heirs. Then he went to stand beside a 7-year-old princess who'd chosen to trust the impossible, and in doing so, changed everything.